Hey everyone, it's Kate, and I'm here with Sujatha Reddy on the Thrive with Kate podcast. And when I met Sujatha, I was like, I've heard her name, and I'd heard her name associated with like deep Ayurvedic wisdom, and then also a bit with counseling and psychedelics. And I thought, wow, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of overlap. Those of you who've read Primal Habits know that trip is a habit I include in Primal Habits. There's other interviews on the Thrive with Kate podcast with Ayurveda and psychedelics. And today we have the opportunity to go deep into the psychology of what is happening in both systems. This is, to me, is really where Sujatha, this is her playground. So why don't we start Sujatha with like, this background in counseling as a professional counselor, this background as a holotropic breath worker, background as a psychedelic assisted psychotherapist, a certified trauma informed therapist, a yoga therapist, a wellness coach, emotional freedom practitioner, Kundalini yoga, and background in traditional Ayurvedic medicine. It's a lot. It's a lot of integration where our listeners may have experienced parts of these things, but not how you are bringing together the whole of it. So talk a little bit about that whole and how one thing leads to another in creating this ecosystem of wisdom.
First of all, Kate, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. It was really nice to get to know you at the Ayurveda conference, and I'm so excited to be here today. My journey actually started with Ayurveda. I did my Ayurvedic medicine from India, and then I worked for about a year, and then I came to this country, and reality of this country really hit me. I'm like, okay, I lost my identity of what no one knows Ayurveda. What am I going to do here? It was a challenge, a lot of challenges that I had to move through to, like a seamstress, like you weave Ayurveda into everything that you do and you live and you exist for. And my journey started just by doing free lectures. It could be in a temple, it could be in a library, just wherever a community was, just educating people and introducing Ayurveda to them. And I ended up in Ohio, Midwest, where really it was a very conservative community, society. And starting with the concepts of very simple concepts of dinacharya, of rutucharya. Mm-hmm. These are the very starting. You call it seeds, planting seeds, and about healthy diet, healthy, routine, very simple. We have ahara, nidra, brahmacharya. These are the three pillars in Ayurveda, and that's all I went with.
Yeah.
And then it was not enough for me, and I wanted to make sure that I actually, practice it as a profession. So I went ahead and got a degree, master's in mental health counseling, because my focus was mental health. How that came about is I have in my family, addictions and mental health. I grew up with that. And so either you become an addict or you become an advocate. So my role had become an advocate, and I had grown up with my father being an alcoholic and family members with mental health. And so that's how, my longing to actually help them, in turn help the community. Everything starts with the mind. And so that was my attraction to mental health. And I got my degree, I got my training, I got my license in that field. And at that time, when I did all this was 30 years ago, there was no mindfulness, And coming from the Eastern country like India, you see mindfulness, it's called mindfulness, but we go through the meditation practices, we go through the pranayama, we go through the yoga, Ashtanga yoga. The yoga, astrology, and Ayurveda are like a triangle. They are interdependent. We have to, actually address from all the three angles to understand you as a whole and you as the part of the whole, and starting from the cosmic consciousness and and to just our being in this world. So that was my very core passion, and I started there practicing Ayurveda through the back door with my license of mental health, and that's how I started to actually help people.
It's, I think, really probably hard for people who haven't spent time in a really different culture to understand how different a spiritually oriented and integrated and somatically oriented and integrated culture is. And then coming into this rugged individualism, like manifest destiny parts of American culture that are like new and shiny and easy and fast and cheap, and like it's really different. It's just really different.
It is. And we have to give it to them in their palate, right?
Yeah.
We cannot chant shlokas, and we cannot go the way that we have been trained. We cannot say, okay, this dosha or this guna, We have to approach it in a scientific way and give it to them in their palate of how they will receive it.
Yeah.
Only then change happens. Only then they will start to understand and accept the fundamental concepts of it. Just depends on how we want to introduce them.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it sounds like we've landed in similar places. Like in 2012, I started coaching Body Thrive, which was just dinacharya. I mean, when we did recharya with seasonal detoxes, and it was just that. And my first book, Body Thrive, was like just that. Like, let's, instead of all these, like, what's your dosha and what's your constitution, prakriti, vikruti, we're just going to take a step back, go to bed early, get up early, do some hydration, elimination, breath body practices before the day starts. Like, just start, and maybe we tap into some mindfulness in the process of our, and this was before like circadian rhythm was an SEO term, right? Like a buzzword. And now that it is, it's great because there's this
it's so much easier.
So much easier.
Especially when you have to explain everything in terms of physiology and your nervous system and how your body functions. Oh my gosh, it is so much easier for people to understand.
Yeah. So now let's go into the psychedelic component, because that's really where I want to spend most of the time.
So through my journey, I mean, I practiced, I think like after 25 years, I had clients from just adjustment disorder to like severe PTSD, and, with veterans, with, violence, with so much trauma, sexual trauma, and so much of this. Years and years of therapy, and they hit a wall. And during COVID, actually, it all started opening up, and I found a fellowship program that actually was started to train students. It was very new. That was the first of its kind in the state of Colorado through the Integrated Psychiatry Institute. And I jumped on it. I said, I got to do this because that was my next level of help.
But how did you know that? Like, that's because there's a lot of people that have similar backgrounds to you that's not obvious.
Well, so this was a postcard that came to me. And I did not even think about psychedelics at that point. I didn't even understand the word psychedelics. Now, I know the word soma, that I came across through Ayurveda and, through all of it, but the word psychedelics, right, was new. And I said, well, this is interesting.
But wait, had you heard of psychedelics and soma? Like, because now it's more popular where people know both Ayurveda and psychedelics, where that's a very common association to be making. Had you already made that association?
Yes. I knew about soma. And, we have not just soma, right? We have some other psychedelic plants in Ayurveda that is used in formulations. Mm-hmm. And they're not teaching us it like a separate psychedelic science, but it is all integrated into the regulated and wellness model and into treating conditions.
So you had already heard of soma as psychedelics, because I hadn't. I was taught Ayurveda as soma is not associated with psychedelics. So to me, that's
yes, I was. In India, we grow up with traditions like the festival of Holi. It is integrated into the society. Mm-hmm. So bhang, is marijuana. So, and mushrooms existed there in, like some of the temple sculptures have, mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so the Rig Veda has, stanzas for describing how the connection to the higher power and how with the use of medicine. Patanjali Yoga Sutras in the 4th chapter, I think it's the first shloka, describes how the union with the God, different ways, and one of it is medicine. So this is the ways that I knew, but it was not as a, like a whole separate subject.
Yeah.
It was just integrated in various ways for our enhancing our soul growth, and Ayurveda supports that. That's how I knew it, but I wanted to kind of get deep dive into it and get qualified and then, learn more. For me, it was also a learning curve. It was going to the next level. Mental health, especially, mind is not separate from the body. And that only came about very recently here, right? We do not separate. Ayurveda doesn't say there is a separate mental health. There's no separateness there. It is in that oneness. We have the Sukshma Sharira, Stula Sharira, all the different bodies. Then we have the koshas. So that is how we look at, how we are, who we are, and part of the whole. So from any channel, when we look at the karmic predisposition, for example, that will come through our causal body, right? Through our chakras and manifesting in our body, karmic predispositions. Or, some things can happen through our body directly, an accident or a, incident that can hurt us and that can affect our, mental or physical health. Mm-hmm. And how our breath is affected with that. So we have what is pranayama, age-old, tools that were already existing, thriving in India. It was nothing new for us.
Right.
So that's how it didn't take me long to make sense of everything using the medicine and what is the medicine going to do, especially psychedelic medicine. So I went through like a whole fellowship with psychedelic medicine, starting with ketamine and then psilocybin, MDMA. So these are the three main medicines that we were taught and introduced to, like ibogaine and some of these knowledge based, right? This is teaching. It's like, okay, you're learning in Ayurveda, just because Jaloka is not allowed here, does that mean we should stop learning that?
Right.
Yeah. Knowledge is important.
Yeah.
We have obstacles.
Politics always changes, right? So politics is controlling access, and that's
demand is where the focus goes, right? So the demand and supply, and psychedelics was one here, and it quickly caught on. Like 2 states. Oregon was the first state. Colorado was the second state to legalize psychedelics, and of course, a lot of research. This is backed by research. The regulatory board is formed. Natural medicine board is formed. And now there is so much, licenses for that, and I'm licensed as a natural medicine facilitator. So, it is the progressing with my career, that took place in time for the benefit of helping my clients and helping myself in the process of gaining much more, expanding my knowledge.
Yeah.
And then, going into breath work, psychedelic breath work. Some people may not want to use psychedelics. They may want to go into that non-ordinary states, and to heal, whatever is in their mind and body through breath work.
Yeah.
So I got certified in holosomatic breath work. So, just have a variety, to choose from to help my clients.
Mm-hmm. I love how, to me, in learning, when I was working with people with circadian rhythm and really studying habit evolution and how do people change their habits, like how does this actually work? And a lot of the research on human behavioralism and habit stacking, right? It's like there's these habits that stack and that there's habits that mesh. Like keystone habit unlocks other habits. So a keystone habit is a habit that will provoke other habits into habituation, into regularity, right?
Absolutely.
And so what we found in that, leading that community, just in circadian rhythm and ultradian rhythm, is it went primal. Like the community went primal, which was wild to be the leader and be like, okay. So a few primal habits that I think make us different in Club Thrive from other Ayurvedic wisdom communities are Shivambu and Trip. And those to me stack. Like when you do one, the other shows up. When you do the other, the one shows up. But it only shows up if you're around other people who are doing that. Like if you don't have access to it, it's like your point with the wisdom. Like if no one's talking about it, then it's really easy in the human lineage. If we don't talk about it or we don't see it acted out by someone else, we can lose chunks of wisdom. And we see this all the time with languages, but we can also see it in terms of primal habits. If you're not hanging out with people who fast, it's really easy to forget how to fast.
Very true.
Right?
Yes, very true. And same thing with meditation, right?
And same thing with meditation.
With satsang, you don't tap into and you're not consistent. Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. Yeah. And who we're with, we're an ultra social species and we rub off on each other, especially habitually. So if you're with people that go to bed late and don't wake up and meditate, it's really easy just to get pulled out of what you already know works. And so
it's important also that, we talk about how your body works with the daily rhythms. And what type of hormones is released and why we are, really made to be in rhythm with the nature. And if how our melatonin rises towards the late afternoon for a reason, so that you go to bed by a certain time. But if you sit in front of a TV, or if you, kind of constantly expose yourself to that EMF, right? Electromagnetic, that light itself, you're disrupting your melatonin. And when you disrupt your melatonin, can you sleep? You can't sleep. Now you're going to miss your first cycle and your second cycle, and somewhere at 2 o'clock you're going to sleep. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And
no, I know.
You're not going to wake up when you have to wake up.
Yeah. Or have the right energy for the next day.
And
Yeah, exactly. That's why in Coaching Body Thrive, we always started with today. We never started with wake up early. It was like early or later dinner. I broke it into 10 habits. The first one was early or later dinner, so that you could go to bed early, so that you could, right?
And how do you
let's
feel?
go in.
How do you feel?
Yeah, exactly.
Some sort of what do you call that, when you get really drunk and next morning hangover.
Yeah, hungover. You're
hungover.
hungover, right? You have ama
So
and
I
your
have to
lymphatics
tell
and
my
you're
clients
hungover.
that what is melatonin healthily at night is serotonin in the daytime. And that's the happy hormone. You're compromising for your daytime if you don't actually, have good melatonin and good night's sleep.
So I want to go into, let's start with ketamine. So let's go into, because there's a lot of people listening who are like, no idea what ketamine is. There's other people who are like vitamin K, right? It's more of a street name, right? My experience with ketamine was on it was a medical psychedelic assisted retreat. And so it was like an IV, like fairly high dose IV with a shaman. So like very powerful combination of sound therapy, somatic therapy, and ketamine. And I write about this in Witch's Cancer Journal. So if anyone wants the details, the blow by blow, it's in there. Including for me, and I noticed this with psychedelics. Psychedelics for me, and it might be because I have experience with the Vedic tradition and chanting, and it's like the mantras revealed, like the sound, like how humans created sound and how the physiology is, how mantra moves the physiology into a different organized pattern, and how mantra can arise as kriya, or as like a spontaneous action or spontaneous healing, or like just an asana, like a spontaneous posture or a spontaneous mudra. That is what tends to happen to me regardless of which psychedelic. But like with ketamine, I got a lot of at that point in time, I needed revelation from the feminine sounds of and wah. I just remember that was like those two came through my physiology, experienced what those sounds are, and it reoriented. And when you have that kind of reorientation, you tend not to forget for like the rest of your life. You're like, oh, that's what that does. That's what that sound does. But let's talk about just ketamine in general, maybe for people who've never heard of it or don't really know it as a psychedelic or only know it as a party drug.
Yeah. So ketamine is actually, it's called a horse tranquilizer, and it is used as an anesthetic still in hospitals for minor surgeries and dental offices, so it is still used. They found that patients who had ketamine, they seemed much happier. They seemed really in a different place, very happy. So research was done with this, therapeutic, like low dose ketamine for depression and for suicidality. treatment-resistant depression and suicidality. It gave such great results. And then they started to develop the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy for clients who really suffer from chronic PTSD, for veterans, and for treatment-resistant depression, and for who are suicidal. And that really, what that does is, it is a dissociative. And
do you want to explain what that means to people?
Yeah, dissociation is, you are not actually engaged into your ego. Your ego drops, ego dissolution. So when you actually, go through
I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but is there like a better word in Sanskrit? Because disassociation, dis is a negative in English, right? And there's a real positive attribute of what is possible when someone can experience that disassociation.
Yeah. So it is a separation, let us say, from the ego. You are in touch with the true self.
There we go.
Okay. So Atman, So what happens at the ego level? Everything is experienced. The Atma experiences everything. Is sitting there and experiencing everything through our sense organs. There's a beautiful shloka. Atma manasa sayunjale. Manam indriyena. Indriya martena. Tato jnanotpatihi. Jnanotpati is knowledge, acquiring knowledge. How do you acquire knowledge? Is all through these sense organs. Your soul is experiencing the world through all these sense organs, right? Now, that experience can be good, bad, or ugly. When you're experiencing something dangerous, that shock to your nervous system, right? That actually is stored in your every cell in your body. That memory is stored. Just as if you cannot reset, that's like a template. Say from age like under 7 years old, a child does not have a defense mechanism. So whatever is coming to the child is experienced, and it just is just there, and it forms like a software, a template. From that place, the child is living life. It could be sexual abuse, it could be even just yelling, or parents fighting in the house, or physical abuse, anything. For that child, when you look at that young kid, it is a huge, impact, and it's coming again through the sense organs, the eyes, the ears, and everything, right? So these are the receptacles receiving. And then what the child is now doing is learning a coping mechanism, which is hiding, walking carefully around parents, or avoiding, or not expressing themselves. There are different behaviors that they engage in. That is survival. Sometimes if it goes to an extreme of sexual abuse, there is complete memory loss of that incident at the conscious level, but it's there deep in your subconscious.
And in the body, right?
And in the body.
Yeah.
Body keeps the score.
Body keeps the score.
When they become, say, teenagers, based on your experiences at that time, that is a fundamental building block. And that is how your life is rolled out. And you are making choices. You're living life, based on those fundamental wiring. Now what happens? Whether they get into another relationship, how they, what choices they make. Everything depends on that. And their mental health, they're having panic attacks or deep depression or whatever it is, it starts from there, right? Yeah. And if you don't remember, if you're steeped in this childhood trauma always, where do you understand how you have to take care of what you have experienced, and how you have to clean that laundry at all? It's like how you need to address it. Therapy is great. You have somebody to talk to, freedom, and you go through that, but there is a limit. And if it is not resolved with therapy, and then what next? There's medication, there's psychotropics in the modern Western psychology and psychiatry. In Ayurveda, it's beautifully described, right? They have described as a treatment module for mental health. Sattva Vajaya Chikitsa. There's like with panchakarma, through the body treatments, you remove all the ama, and then you do also, sattva vajaya, and then passive treatments, and then herbs, you take herbs. So all of these, and then mantra chanting, there's sound healing, there's gemstones. There is so many different ways, and then there is rituals, there is puja, there is energy healing. These are all the ways that Ayurveda treats also the mind. And Ayurveda clearly says, if you want to reach the mind, go through the body, and if you want to reach the body, go through the mind.
Yeah.
Daiva Vipashraya, Yukti Vipashraya, and Sattva Vajaya. These are the three major pathways for healing the mind in Ayurveda. And when you look at actually the yoga philosophy, and when you look at koshas, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha, most of our problems, don't go, like we cannot capable of going beyond the Manomaya Kosha. A lot of the things are addressed with the Annamaya, Pranamaya, and Manomaya. Now, to get to the next Vijnanamaya Kosha, that is the power of discrimination. We lose it when we are clouded with so much. That's where psychedelics come into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to crack.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you have access to that part of your psyche, and you're able to see from that place, this is it. And now you have this newfound neuronal network, neuronal pathways in your brain, and without fear and anxiety, you are now going to step into resolving and taking action and doing the things that you need to do to heal yourself.
So let's talk about the detoxifying effect that if people have ama, or they have, so those not familiar with ama, we could say it's like that which is undigested, or that which is not integrated, or that which is blocking consciousness, or that which is not enabling high quality tissue to be formed and systems to be integrated, or all of that, or that which isn't holding an integrity of an immune system from integrating. And so often when people do, whether it's ketamine or psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin, whether it's LSD, there can be a ayahuasca, like on and on, like there can be a detoxifying effect where it can affect, to me, it's like what starts to show up is the karmas of panchakarma, where it's like out through the nose, out through the bunghole, like out through the mouth, like that there's just this, the body is like, okay, the gates are opening, and I can just start to move. And then those of you who study Ayurveda know like the vayus, that there's these directional movements of how energy, and so it's like there's something on like unlocking that ego into Atman. There's also the unlocking of whatever is holding the physiological pattern in place from the body being in a natural ability to detoxify. And let me also say into the space is like there's also usually an awareness of Agni. So if someone's been overeating to handle their pain, there's often a reconnection with, I don't need to eat so much, or I don't need to eat for a while, where there's more awareness, or the opposite of like, I need deep nutrition and I'm more attracted to the phytonutrients, or even the animal nutrients like bone broth, like I'm more attracted, I can hear, I can listen, and that self-reflection part of Vijnanamaya Kosha, that like gateway between consciousness as such and the mind, is more, and now a two-way street.
So what we're talking here is about the term ama. The term ama is not only at our physical body level. When you look at the koshas, ama is also at the level of all the koshas, whether it is manomaya kosha, the impressions or the memories of the trauma or the depression or whatever it is, right? It is connected also to the gut. In Ayurveda, we say everything originates from the gut, right? So that is one way. It can also, there is also the accidental, situational that can really come from the mind to the body, cause imbalance to the body. So ama is that undigested or unprocessed that we have not cleared or reset for getting our balance back. That could be in our body in terms of digestion, that can manifest as a disease. That could be in the form of our mind, that things have not been resolved. And the way we communicate, the way we choose, it's called prajna aparada. When your prajna is not there completely, that the conscious state of mind, aparada happens. That is a mistake. It is the conscious mistake. You're choosing a wrong path. You're choosing a wrong way of doing things. It may have worked for you as a kid because you had to do it at that time, but that would not work for you as an adult. But you're using the same thing. So that's how when they come to therapy, we kind of help them identify that, and then we kind of help them, restructure and rewire and rethink. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's what we use. Now, when we're caught with integrating psychedelics and Ayurveda, how do we clear ama first? We have to prepare the vessel for everything. And the vessel for us is this vessel, right? So how do we prepare the vessel? In Ayurveda, right? We have to do the panchakarma based on their constitution, based on their blockages, at whichever level they're blocked, we identify that. And then once we finish the panchakarma, now the vessel is clean, so that the medicine that we take, which is the psychedelic, whether it's ketamine or whether it's psilocybin or anything, really does not face any obstacles into their subtle channels. That subtle channels obstruction, Srotas obstruction, is cleared or softened through the cleansing protocols of Ayurveda.
Yeah.
And then the medicine for the deeper experience to clear any residual, anything that needs to be, like Drano, you have to put Drano to like clean the place, like cleaning your channels. And the connection, sometimes the mystical experiences, the connection to, the higher cosmic consciousness, and the connection to even your ancestral entities, the connection to your previous birth. So there's so many things that happen during a trip, a psychedelic trip. And you no longer come back as the same person. Really, you are completely changed. You do not actually come back to just believing in this ego state, living in this ego state, material ego state. Now you know that you're just not your body, and it's just not this life. It's more than that. And what happens is when you get access to that, fear drops. And now you know what you have to do to, completely heal, and to not hold on and not carry that backpack every day and every time. Just how you can drop the backpack. Drop your backpack and be free. And that psychedelic experience will show you. It will show you. And if your channels are so blocked, it will hit that blockage and it will show you, you will re-experience trauma. Actually, you can re-experience trauma. And that is why you need to do it in a therapeutic setting with a qualified therapist, so that, it's not harmful. So you are held, your space is held for you in that, for safety.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think so much with how, especially because we're mostly Americans are listening, as opposed to, we'll say, there will be quite a few Indians listening as well from India. There's something in like this rugged individualism in America of like, do it yourself, like figure it out. And then because the history of psychedelics in this country, if we look at Native American culture versus Western American culture, it's like they're very disconnected, right? Like their Native American culture is not integrated, so there's not really a wisdom tradition of the plants and the medicine in this land, and it's interfacing with this individualism of like, do it yourself. And it's I think hard for other cultures to understand how ingrained that is, and I think it's hard for Americans to understand how ingrained they are in this, and especially many were raised with in an unattached, and I find this all the time in Club Thrive, and it's true for me too, of just like unattached in the parenting style of our parents, and it's hard to know how much that affects our psyche until we've experienced the support of a strong container, which is why I teach the club model, is it's like, stop trying to figure it out yourself and go it alone. Like, it's so much easier just to be with people that are at a certain level of consciousness, that are doing certain habits, certain practices, and having certain types of conversations. It's like that's so supportive to the nervous system. When we then talk about it's
called co-regulation.
Yeah, co-regulation. Yeah.
Right? So how, the motherhood, and when the baby is born, how the baby in the Eastern cultures, they sleep with the mother. The baby, the fetus grows in the womb for 9 months, and now the baby comes out, and now the baby is put in a crib in a separate room. That is not a thing coming in India.
Right.
So
or in any indigenous culture, in any primal culture,
and
any
actually,
mammalian.
when there is sleep in the mother, right? Mm-hmm. That co-regulation and that experience of safety and nurturing there is no anxiety.
No. And there's no I. Like it's
There
a
is
we.
no,
It's that,
we.
right? It's that
Yeah,
Daniel
there's no I.
Siegel. It's like we. It's me, we. It's that.
Yes.
And so if we
Until 7 years old, you know, the kids and the parents are so bonded. Separate room isn't a thing. My children slept with us in bed with us, till my son was 7 years old. Then he wanted to go to his own bedroom.
Yeah.
That was fine.
Yeah.
So that was okay. When you cannot sleep without your husband or your wife or your partner, how can you expect a baby to sleep in a separate room?
So in the same way, let's bridge this into like when those of us who haven't maybe had that much experience with being in a really held container, like maybe we've had a massage and had a experience on a table, or maybe we've had experiences of being in a group yoga retreat or something like that, where we have some reference points for that ability of a container to be held, where an old ego structure can literally fall apart, can literally start to disintegrate, and a new identity start to integrate. In the psychedelic setting, when someone else is holding that, something else happens that doesn't happen when the space isn't held. So let's as far as people that don't have a reference point for that, like maybe talk about but maybe have a reference point for doing psychedelics in more of like a party situation, or in a self-exploration that's not actually held. And maybe there's not other practices, like someone else that knows holotropic breath work, someone else that knows mantra or sound therapy. It's not the same thing.
No. See, there is different ways of reaching a psychedelic state. One is a psychedelic medicine, the medicine. That's only one. Music. Like when singers go into like that music, that's why coming from India, if you notice the artists, they touch the stage, do namaskaram, like give salutations to the stage. And then they get on the stage, they chant, and then they touch their instrument. It's all in the name of divinity. It's all offered to the divine. They are only a vehicle. It's all offered to the divine. They go with that mindset. The set and setting that set and setting is actually culture, comes with the culture of learning an art, or learning a music instrument, or learning an art form, dancing. Everything is, when you do it in that type of setting, what happens is, whenever ego doesn't come in the way, and then you are singing to the Lord, you're offering everything to the Lord, or the universal, you're just sending everything out to that higher power. And you can reach that high into a psychedelic state when you are in that a trance state. It's called a trance state, So it's not an addiction. It is to enhance your own soul growth and the connection, the yoga with the higher, union. Now, that is a sattvic way of connection, right? Now, the tamasic is the addiction to alcohol. Addiction, is where you have to constantly abuse that to get that little high, but it doesn't last. Alcohol especially is only drawing from your own dopamine and serotonin reserves, and next day you're going to feel hungover. So an addiction or depression is a longing for connection, and the only way they know is this, So if we can help them with being connected to their inner self, it's going to take time depending on how strong it is, and the openness and the willingness. Through all these various tools, life is bliss.
Yeah. So this integration part, so we'll say the revelation, right? So something's revealed in a macro dose of a psychedelic, and when prepared for, we'll just imagine a best case scenario where the person has a guide, has prepared with panchakarma and opened their physical channels so that the medicine can move into the subtle channels, and there's a ego dissolution, and there's an insight, there's a revelation, there's a vision, there's an understanding of what needs to change.
A non-ordinary state of consciousness, a mystical experience.
And then there's
and a revelation, like you said.
Yeah, right. Something's revealed. So we have, and I love that with like Shiva Nataraj, right? Where we have these acts of Shiva, this like concealment and revelation.
Yeah,
It seems impossible to go through all that and not have a very profound revelation, right? When done, set and settings right.
completely. And that's why when you come back after a psychedelic journey, it's important for integration is so important because what you have experienced now, the integration part is the most important thing. And the integration can happen with taking pearls, taking the seeds from your experience and planting them to, work towards what you want to work towards, planting those seeds and how you want to nurture those seeds to grow. And Ayurveda with integration with like Shirodhara and Abhyanga after an experience, it just is heavenly. And then following the principles of Ayurveda or the recommendations of Ayurvedic lifestyle and, continuing that integration process is so important. So my clients, usually continue for like 6 months to a year integrating what their experience is, and they see how changes, and it's long lasting. Just that one experience, that day what you had, that's not it. That's just the beginning. You're going to have some downloads, some revelations continuously for a period of time. So we don't want to lose that. So we want to like have them journal. We want to have them be in touch with nature. We want to have them change their thought process and how they think, act, and feel. And we want to give them new tools to actually hold space for themselves with all of this experience.
Yeah. And so do you want to just describe like what after, like how that integrates back into your like counseling and psychology background and diet and lifestyle with Ayurveda?
Yeah. So the acceptance is they're much more open now. You have opened the doors. They're much more open to making changes. Now they have this new neuronal pathways flooding in their brain, Now anything that you're introducing from that point is received well. There is no resistance. There is no parts coming up that are trying to either fight you or protect you or manage your life, in a dysfunctional way. All that is calmed down. And so with that, there is so much openness. Now that is where whatever you plant is going to grow. So with integration, it's faster. What 10 years of therapy could not do, it's done here very quickly.
Yeah. Yep. Just that. It's so hard to, I think so let's talk about the, like people that have a lot of, of fear of like, oh, I could never do psychedelics. Maybe a lot of it's coming from taboo, like cultural.
Yes.
Taboo. And I just want to share, like I had this friend who was visiting me and we'd known each other for a while. And I was literally like, I can't really hang out with you. You do, like, unless you do this. Like, it just means I'm going to have to compartmentalize a bit. And, like, just our future won't be able to, there's stuff I just couldn't break through. And there was so much rigidity around the taboos of this, like, good girl, follow the rules. And because of the nature and, like, whatever it is, 48 states, psychedelics are still illegal. And a lot of this is due to, it's due to politics, not science. And yet that's not very well understood. If you're in the realm of mainstream media, there's a lot that someone can be really blocked from of like, this is illegal, this is bad. And they may have an association with being good. I like the virgin witch, like Jungian psychology, of like they have an association more with the virgin than with the witch as their persona. And so this becomes blocked off. And because this becomes blocked off, there's so many things are so much harder. Like so many things they can't break through, and psychotherapy is not going to really...
For sure.
Yeah.
So they have very limited view of the world. So at that point, it's not our job to like change them, but work with that belief and say, okay, what could one is maybe prayer, maybe chanting, maybe even just therapy, and not only that, breath work. They will be open to that. If we tell them, okay, for a massage, see, those are some of the things that you can use for them to how to regulate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you want them to have a mystical experience, breath work is another way.
Mm-hmm.
Like holotropic, holosomatic breath work, really you can have
blow it open.
Experience.
Yeah.
And really release a lot of those rigid boundaries. And that's a commitment again. One is not enough there too. You just have to If it feels good, they will come back. And also there is something called karmic predisposition. If they have to go through certain things in their life, they will, unless they change their mind to something, it won't manifest.
It won't manifest. So it was interesting because that conversation was so, and I know that conversation and coaching provoke readiness, and it was able to do that. And so she was able to start with a microdose and then self-adjust, and I was holding the container, the setting, and so much change.
I don't know if you read the book Crossing the Chasm.
No.
You should read that one.
Okay.
So a lot of the population come under that peak of the crossing the chasm. Most of the 80% are there. The first 10% are the ones that really, don't even think and just go for, yes, I'm going to try this. They don't need a scientific, research. They don't need, anything. They just instinctively, there's no, what, this is something new. I want to try this. Go. You see, that's the first 10%.
Yeah.
They are the trailblazers. They are the ones who are going to try something new that they never did.
Right.
So then comes, slowly the population, once they see, oh, they did it, it helped them. Okay, maybe I should try it too. That's another next 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are, well, has there been research on this? They look for evidence-based medicine. Mm-hmm. That is why they're very much sold on Western medicine. And how they think, everything is dependent on what their belief is a doctor. Doctor can cure it all for them.
Yeah.
And that is why, they get stuck in that loop. Even do a psychedelic, take that approach, most of my clients have to not have any psychotropic medications. That takes a while to wean them off of the medications. Because it interferes with the same opioid receptors and they may not have that effect. AMA sitting again. This is AMA. Mm-hmm. When there is AMA, you're not going to have the same effect.
Yeah,
so The clearing, getting the medicine off of your system, there's a shelf life to that too, right? So we have to wait for a certain time and slowly wean them off and then introduce them to, a whole different way of giving them tools and teaching them different things. And like I said, the dinacharya, the rutucharya, the nidra, vichara, everything needs to be changed.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And microdosing definitely helps with supporting them when they're weaning off medication. And to develop a relationship with the medicine.
Yeah.
Even though it's not noticeable, it's very subtle.
Yeah.
Still useful.
Yeah. I just want to ask on microbiome. I mean, the silo-biome, like these studies on the microbiome and particularly with, they have been microbiome studies done with most of the psychedelics at this point, but it seems like particularly with the mushroom, with mycelium based, that it's like a deep relationship with restoration of eubiosis from dysbiosis, or at least evidence looks like it's going that way. And I think for anyone who understands enough about microbiome and understands enough about mushrooms and the whole ecosystem of the web starts to like kind of get how
mycology. So
right.
Mushrooms, interestingly, don't...
And gut-brain access. Let's just tie that part into. Gut-brain access.
Yes. So most of our serotonin is made in our gut, 80%, through our gut bacteria. And only 20% is made in the brain. And now, that's why we say everything originates from our gut in Ayurveda. If our microbiome is cultured, it's not healthy, there is disturbance in making the serotonin, and the communication is two-way. And what are you going to experience? You may not experience any symptoms in your gut, but it affects your brain. Mental health. Sometimes I look for mood disorders, metabolic mood disorders. What that means is if your metabolism is not right, you can experience mental health conditions. For example, you may not have an enzyme that is going to convert what you have taken into that happy serotonin and dopamine. A gene, you may have inherited that gene. So at that point, you're only having a metabolic disorder. You're not having a brain disorder. So we have to understand really, even with their mental health, where is it in the mind, or is it coming from your and your gut microbiome. There is it's very important, and that you can find. That's why the addictions and ADHD and the depression are all intertwined in families.
Yeah.
And just taking a history, you can really see, oh my, there may be a connection, predisposition here.
Yeah.
So no matter what psychedelics you do, you're not going to solve the problem there if you have a metabolic disorder. You see? So you may have revelations, you may have all that may last for a bit, but then you're going to go back because, that you're not making it. So we have to be, and also there are contraindications, like who can use psychedelics and who cannot. People with a, family history of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. So these are the pregnancy, these are some of the contraindications to use psychedelics. And if you are having a sort of like a heart disease or a high blood pressure, so there are contraindications. So we have to be very careful. I send them to a medical provider to actually qualify, clear, they're eligible for a psychedelic experience.
That probably builds a lot of confidence too. Like if they are, that there's, it's like more of that holding the space, the container. What about, because another concern that I've heard, and I feel like it's not necessarily like it's like something that can get in the way of something of like higher truth, is like addiction. So people that have had like alcoholism, there's often a lot of fear around psychedelics, even though the evidence on psychedelics is that they're non-addictive. So how, when something can really help them.
You know how a diamond is cut with a diamond, right?
With a diamond. Yeah.
Same philosophy.
Yeah, that's where
an addiction is also treated with psychedelics.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've seen. I've seen it so much.
It's really helpful. Yeah. And again, it could be genetic predisposition with addiction. It could be nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, addiction is only a manifestation, it's a symptom. If there's a deeper issue, it's called dual diagnosis, there's a deeper mental health issue, and addiction is only a symptom sometimes. Yeah. And they would need that to actually regulate their mood.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, addiction is a desperate call for connection, which they have lost, and only at the ego level. They have lost that connection with themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Amen. Well, it's such a pleasure to just have this deep dive with you, Sujatha. I just want to point people to your website, AYUmind, AYU for Ayurveda, AYUmind, MIND.com. I know a lot of people, especially in the Colorado area, will be inspired to reach out. And anything else that you want to add?
I would add that each one has immense potential, and each one is divine. All you need to do is just look inwards. In whatever way you want to reach out for help to learn how to, that's the best investment.
Yeah. Amen. Amen to that. Yeah. I love it. I love how our paths have gone in completely like these parallel intertwining tracks through very different ways. It's really a pleasure to cross your path.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to just have this conversation with you today, and you're doing such good work, and I'm sure we'll cross paths again.
Yeah, me too. I'll have more questions for you in a few months, and I'll get you back on the show. And I know my community has a lot of questions because they're
I'm happy to help. Thank you so much.